Hey, this is Natalie Hoffman with flyingfreenow.com, and I have a couple of questions that people sent in that I'm going to cover today. The first question has to do with, well, I'll just read it. How do I explain to my pastor that marriage counseling with my covert passive-aggressive husband would not help, but rather harm me? So first of all, we need to understand that usually, not always, but often, pastors and people who are religious leaders, maybe small group leaders, people like that, they are invested in keeping the marriage intact. Okay? That's one of the reasons why they send you to marriage counseling, because they think in their minds that if they send you to marriage counseling, the marriage counselor is going to be able to do some voodoo on you and your marriage is going to be amazing. All right, marriage counseling is great for garden variety marriage problems. Like maybe your husband's not picking up his socks and you're irritated about that and you need to process through that with a marriage counselor. You can do that. But when we're talking about abuse, like constant, chronic abuse that's happened over the course of many years that will not go away, that is not a marriage counseling issue. That's an issue where an abuser needs to get a particular kind of help, and the victim needs to get another particular kind of help. And they absolutely cannot be together in getting the same kind of help because they need two completely different kinds of help. But a lot of times pastors don't understand this. So the pastor is invested in keeping the marriage together, and of course the abuser is invested in keeping the marriage together. And you are too. If you're a victim, you want to keep the marriage together. But your main priority most likely is, I just want the abuse to stop. I need to get away from the abuse. Either the abuser needs to change and stop abusing me, or I need to get away. All right. So you're not thinking about the marriage per se. You're mostly thinking about your main issue is the abuse. So how do you explain to your pastor that if you go to marriage counseling, that's not going to help? You can't really explain it to them. They're not going to understand it. And they're actually going to argue with you and fight with you about the problem, because you see how your view of the issue is completely different from their view of the issue. So you're starting from a completely different place. Now you can let him know what your purpose and goal is. You can say, hey, I understand that you are desirous of keeping us married, but and I would love to stay married, but I need to be married to someone who's not going to abuse me anymore. And so my main goal is to get help and safety from abuse. And if that's your goal too, then let's talk about that. But marriage counseling is not going to keep me safe from abuse. Okay, so that's one way of doing it. And now another thing, this is the second question, but it has to do with the first one. A lot of women will come to me and they'll say, you know what? I created these boundaries. I let other people know. Other people were holding him accountable. He went through all the hoops and now he seems to be changing. They all think he's changed, but I'm not really seeing any changes at home. I mean, maybe some aesthetic changes on the outside, but I can tell it's kind of just the setup for more abuse, because abuse is a cycle, right? There's the abuse part, and then there's the part where they're hooking you back in. The hooking you back in part, some people call that the good part, but there is no good part of an abuse cycle. The hooking you back in part is the part where they're being nice to you and trying to get you to let your guard down again, and then they go back to being abusive once you've done that, okay? So, but everyone on the outside, nobody on the outside understands that dynamic because they're not living in your marriage. So one really easy thing that you can say to people when they say, well, he's changed. How come you're not, get with the program? Why aren't you forgiving him? Why aren't you getting back together with him? Or why aren't you, you seem really bitter. You seem really stuck. And, maybe you need to get some help for yourself. Here's what you can say to them. You can say, hey, if he has changed in his relationship with you, amazing. I'm super glad. I'm glad that you guys have ironed out your relationship with him, and that he's being great with you, and that his changed behaviors is showing up in the laboratory room, meaning the counseling room, and it's showing up at church, and it's showing up everywhere else that before he was really good anyways. So Not really seeing a change there, but whatever. I'm glad he's changed for you. Unfortunately, he hasn't changed in his relationship with me. And I'm the one that's married to him. Okay? So if he and I are married, then who needs to be the one that has to see that change happen? I do. I have to be the one to see the change happen. And I'm not seeing it. Now, if you're seeing it, great. But I have to see it. And then they might say, well, look it, he's done this, 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 and this. And you can just say, so what? So what? I'm not seeing it on the back end. I have to see it behind the four walls of our house. I have to see it over a long period of time. And not only that, but I'm not looking for change. I'm not looking necessarily just for behavior change, although that would happen if there was truly change. I'm looking for a complete change of attitude and heart. I'm looking for the light bulbs to go on in his mind so that he sees what he's done and changes from the inside out. Change doesn't happen from the outside in. You can't coerce change. You can't force change. You can't encourage someone to change. I mean, you can, but that's not going to be their motivator to change. People, human beings, are motivated to change on the inside of themselves. All right? They have to want, first of all, they have to see that there's something that needs to be changed. That's step number one. Most of these guys can't even get past that step. But secondly, once they see that, wow, there's something that needs to change here on the inside, my attitudes towards women, my attitudes towards my wife, my attitudes towards marriage, my attitudes towards how the world works. Once they see that, then they have to get over the next hurdle, which is they have to want to change. So even if they do see it, they have to go, oh, I really want this. And then they have to want it enough to actually go out and do the work of changing. You guys, changing is, on the one hand, it starts on the inside and it starts to blossom and grow, but it's hard work. And if you don't see that person doing the hard work, not because the pastor is telling him to, or his counselor is telling him to, or you're telling him to, he has to be telling himself to do the hard work. He has to be getting on Google and Googling answers. He has to be reading the books. He has to be initiating the counseling and paying for the counseling. If he's not doing those things, then he is not even doing the work of changing, let alone changing. All right? Quick little fixes like, oh, I'll be really nice and I'll talk really sweet to you and I'll give you a peck on the cheek when I get home from work. Hello? That's not change. That's acting. That's like pretending that you're an actor in a drama and then playing a different role. Anybody can do that. We all do that. That's not what real transformation is. Real transformation is authentic, organic, and it comes from inside of a person. So I hope that makes sense. All right, there's some questions here. Candace asks, what if the woman is the abuser? What is she supposed to do? Well, first of all, it goes both ways. I mean, if the woman is the abuser, she needs to change. She needs to get that inner change. Most women will ask me, though, and I'm not sure if that's your situation, but most women will say, they'll come into the membership group, for example, and one of their first questions will be, I don't know if it's him or if it's me. Well, that's why my book is called, Is It Me? Making Sense of Your Confusing Marriage. Is it me? Am I the one? Maybe I'm the one that's causing all the problems. Because that's what you've been told. That's what you've been told your whole life, right? Maybe you were told that growing up, or maybe you weren't told that growing up, but now you've been told that in your marriage for 2 or 3 decades, that you're the problem that needs to be fixed. And yes, everyone's got problems that need to be fixed, okay? But most of the women that I work with have been working their butts off their entire lives trying to fix themselves so that they can make everybody happy, so that they can please everyone, so that they can, they've been dotting their I's and crossing their T's so that people will love and accept them, because they don't love and accept themselves, for one thing. So they think that the only way that they have value and worth is if they can get the love and acceptance of the people around them. And it doesn't work that way. And that doesn't make you an abuser, okay? That actually makes you more susceptible to being abused. So if you're a woman who has been reacting to the abuse in your life by, I know for myself, especially towards the end of my marriage, those last few years, I was swearing, I was yelling, I threw a couple of teacups during the course of that time. Like my teacups, I didn't ever destroy anything of his. I destroyed 2 of my really precious teacups because I was trying to, I think consciously actually, even thinking, I just got to get him to see that I am at the end of my ever-loving rope and I'm ready to hang myself with it. And so I was trying to get his attention and doing it in very dramatic ways, but I was not an abuser. You guys, someone who is an abusive person, those kind of mentality, an abusive mentality comes from inside of us. And it's a mentality that my worldview and the way I see things and the way I look at the world is everything. And I don't care what you think. I don't care what your opinion is. I don't care what your perspective is. I don't care about how you view the world or how you've experienced something. That's irrelevant to me. In fact, the only way that you are relevant in my life is for how you can serve me or how you can reflect back to me my worldview and how I view life. All right, that's an abusive attitude. So most of us don't have that attitude. Most of us who are in part of this group or part of this this movement, women of faith who are in abusive relationships or in abusive churches, we actually do care about other people. We do have empathy for them. In fact, that's part of the problem. I mean, it's a beautiful thing and we need to keep that up, but it actually can trip us up a little bit, because then what happens is we are constantly projecting our own empathy onto abusive people. And we think, well, they must have had a bad day and I feel really bad for them. And I wonder if there's a way that I can make their day better. You know, even so they are yelling at you and crapping all over you. And here you are thinking of a way to make their day better. Okay? That's what we usually do. But after many years of this, we get tired. We get exhausted and we start realizing, you know what? Something is not right. Something's not right. And I need to start standing up for myself. And some of us stand up for ourselves sooner than later. But all of us know that when you stand up for yourselves, when you show up in the relationship, an abusive person doesn't like that. They don't want you to show up. You are there only to reflect them. You're not allowed to be yourself. You're not allowed to have another opinion. You're not allowed to have different tastes. You're not allowed to have, you are, as long as those opinions and tastes and ideas match up with his. All right? You're not allowed to say no. You're not allowed to disagree. And when you do that, and when you say, hey, I don't like it when you treat me like that, when you say those things, I don't like that. Please stop. When you say that, you know what's going to happen? You know it's going to happen because it's happened to you. You're going to be told, what is your problem? I didn't even mean that. You totally misinterpreted that. And you do that too. And I'm not sure that's what you get. You basically get it thrown back in your face. And then you're left feeling, if you're anything like how I was, you're left feeling guilty and feeling like, and kind of mad too. In fact, you might argue back with him. I mean, I used to do that. I used to argue. I used to yell. I used to go around in circles. We'd go in these circular conversations. And pretty soon, and some of you have heard me say this, but pretty soon I was literally, I was going batshit crazy, you guys. Pretty soon I was literally in the kitchen, spinning around, dancing around in circles, going round and around and around we go, where we stop, nobody knows, because I didn't even know how else to handle the absolute mind-blowing insanity of those circular conversations. All right, I know you're hearing me because I know you know exactly what I'm talking about. All right, if you're worried that you're abusive, most people who are abusive don't ever think, I think I might be abusive. They don't think that way. But if you really genuinely do believe that you've been abusive, sorry, my phone rang, and your partner is the victim, meaning that he is a very kind person, he sees you, he validates you, he cares about your perspective, He treasures you. He loves you. He has respect for you. And you are not showing him respect. You're not showing him that kind of love. You're not giving him space, but he's giving you space. If you're constantly blaming him for everything and he's constantly saying he's sorry to you all the time and asking you for forgiveness, then yeah, then you might be the abuser. And if you really are genuinely abusive to your partner, you need to get into counseling and you need to get help for that. All right? There is help for people like that. But I'm telling you, you don't see the abusers in the counselor's offices. Do you know who's populating the counselor's offices all across this planet Earth? Victims. The victims are going to counseling to try to get help for all of their PTSD symptoms that they have from living with an abuser. All right? Now, I think some abusers have PTSD symptoms too. I think there are many abusers that have grown up in abusive environments, and that's why they abuse. It's not an excuse though for them. And at the end of the day, that's not your problem. Your problem is that you're being abused, and what are you going to do about it? All right? Your job isn't to fix other adults, even your husband. Your job is to figure out what you're going to do about your life and how your life and your health are being compromised because you're living in a toxic, abusive environment. And perhaps your religious environment is also keeping you there and re-abusing you. All right. I think we're done. There's no more questions, and this is a good time to end. So until next time, fly free. And by the way, if you are not familiar with my work, you can see more and read more over on my blog. It's flyingfreenow.com. If you sign up at the top of my website, I will send you the first chapter of my book and the first chapter of the companion workbook for free. All you have to do is sign up. I'll send you the PDF copies of both of those. It's like a power-packed therapy session, and you will know at the end of reading that chapter and doing that workbooks, those few workbook pages, you will know. It'll be very clear to you what's going on in your marriage, and then you can make decisions about what you're going to do after that. All right, fly free.